Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm going to be talking about the alignment involving Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars, and the new moon. Really, the new moon is an important additive here, simply because it's going to trace the path of this important alignment during the course of the days that it's alive and well. And I'm going to be looking at this from all 12 points of view, all 12 signs. And I want to say that if you know what your ascending sign is and the degree of your ascending sign, you can then figure out which houses are involved. And then you'll want to look at it two ways. You'll want to look at it from the perspective of your sun sign, and also from the perspective of the houses that you absolutely know this alignment is taking place in. Sometimes I think people think perhaps the moon sign should be important. Well, of course, moon signs are terribly important in terms of our natal chart and our inner person, if you like. But we don't want to look at this alignment from the perspective of the sign your moon is in. That's what I certainly don't want to do on this video, or indeed any of my videos. So let's start from the beginning and look at why this alignment is so important, what it involves, who are the key players. And it's also interesting that even though you can split it up bit by bit, it's a very, very close alignment, but it will take place over the course of about 7 days. So we'll start round about the 16th as Jupiter gets into Taurus, and we'll go right through to about the 23rd of May. So it's a few days when this influence, this alignment is going to be really, really strong. And there are going to be peak moments, which I think are particularly around the 19th of May. But if we have that nice kind of loose feel to this period of time, it's better to work with it like that, rather than thinking, oh, it's got to be exact at this moment on this day, and then that moment on that day comes and goes and nothing, and then later, 2 days later, there it is. So we need to have a kind of orb of influence where this particular alignment is in play. And having said that, I'm recording this on the 29th of April. But as we get nearer the 19th of May, that period, 16th to the 23rd, you're probably going to start to sense it. Whether you look at it in the way of what events are happening and you think, oh, that's typical of what this alignment is, that's just what I'd expect, or whether you're feeling it in yourself and you're seeing the events in your own life that are really reflective of this particular alignment. So let me take it a little bit by bit. What we're looking at is Jupiter in Taurus, Jupiter newly arrived in Taurus, as it does 16th of May. Pluto newly arrived in Aquarius, that went in on March the 23rd. But of course, it's such a slow-moving planetary body that it's still 0 degrees and a few minutes into Aquarius. And what's going to join all this on the 19th of May is going to be Mars, and Mars will be in Leo. So Mars is going to oppose Pluto, and that's going to be intersected by Jupiter. And we call that a T-square, a fixed T-square. And as I said, I'm going to take you through that when I look at it in sign by sign, but I'm also going to talk about it generally because I think this is pretty important. What we may also need to bear in mind is that the solar eclipse of the 20th of April was also on these exact same points. That's why that period of time was so powerful and eventful. And if you have something at 0 degrees of the fixed signs in your chart, let's say 0 degrees to about 2, even 3, or anything from 27 through to 29 of the cardinal signs, then you're going to be in the ballpark of this particular alignment and also the recent solar eclipse. And I think that might be important because for you to have a look at the events in your own life round about that mid to late April period, because there's likely to be not a replay, but some kind of resonance with that period of time when we come to this one, 16th to the 23rd, which I'm talking about on this particular video. Now, what I like to do and what I do with my students in astrology is give everybody keywords, because if we can work with a keyword, it makes it nice and simple. But of course, there's nothing really simple in astrology. And every single planet, almost everything in astrology, not only has a positive and negative expression, but it also has what I call a tier of meaning. Many, many things resonate with a particular planet, particular aspect, particular house, or whatever we might be looking at in astrology. So if we break this down and we look at what Jupiter is offering and its keywords, we have growth and expansion, all good words. We love to think of growth. What we don't like is thinking of inflation. It's not so good, is it? But then we have to look at all, ends of the spectrum with a planet or an angle. If we come to Pluto, then we're looking at transformation and reformation. And I particularly love reformation because it's almost like you can work with what you've got, but you're reforming it. You're moving the furniture around and maybe getting rid of something and replacing something else, but we're still working with what we've got in our life. So these two are really principal players in this alignment because they're slower moving. Jupiter taking a year to go through, in this case, Taurus. Pluto taking, well, my goodness, almost 20 years sometimes to go through a sign. Very, very slow moving. Mars, of course, is much quicker. 18 months to do a revolution of the zodiac. So it's temporary, but what Mars is going to do is really boost the effect of this Jupiter-Pluto square. And as we go through this video, you're going to get an increasing sense of what all this means. Now, talking about Pluto, which is reformation and transformation, we're also looking at Mars, who's introducing itself into this dyad. And Mars is all about action. It's about conflict. It's about desire, ambition. So we put all these words together. And I think you're there before me. You have to know that this alignment is very powerful and very forceful. And so that the good things get better and bigger, but so too do the bad things. And because we've introduced Mars into the mix, and one of Mars's keywords is conflict, then we'll see the escalation of conflicts, as well as perhaps things that are driven by good motives, and they become really amazing. And we're aware of amazing things going on in the world in a good way. So we always have to take the balance between the good and the bad. Now, when it comes to looking at this personally, what it means for each of us, I've given these keywords a slightly different meaning so that we can put these together and perhaps even stick these three words on our desks, on our fridges, above our beds, wherever we can see them. Because we'll be reminded about what this configuration is all about and how best we can fit it into our lives, embrace it and use it. So we've got three good keywords. We've got Jupiter, opportunity. We've got Pluto, power. And we've got Mars, courage. So we've got this idea of conquering, courage with opportunity and power. We put those ideas together. You can see what a time of opportunity it is for all of us if we can all become empowered and if we can all direct those desires, those actions in the direction we want to. We've got a cosmic tailwind behind us. And I particularly like that idea. We can look at it another way as well, and we can look at it more in the sense of mythology. And we think about Jupiter being the king of the gods. And in a way, there's always something rather regal about Jupiter. And Jupiter has a lot to do with finance as well. If Venus is the lesser benefic, lots to do with money. Jupiter is the greater benefic, also a lot to do with money. So there's a lot going on with Uranus in Taurus, which is a Venus rule sign, Jupiter now in Taurus. We've got all sorts of things relating to world economies and big financial explosions or crashes. Remember, you can have growth good and inflation and collapse not so good. What we also need to look at is Pluto. Pluto, the lord or the god of the underworld. And when we think about Pluto in essence, we think about going right to the root of things, right to the core of things. It's what we might call the core of the earth itself. Think how much power there is in the center of the earth. And if we look at the mythology of that, Pluto ruling the underworld, and a place of great riches, but also of great darkness. Well, we again can, look at that in terms of what Pluto means in our lives, and we can see its core energy. It's what we have at our core and how we can harness that in terms of what we want to manifest and achieve. And remember, what other name did I give Jupiter just then? I gave it opportunity. So we've got opportunity coming into play. If we also look at Mars in all of this, we see Mars is the god of war. And so we can't necessarily make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I mean, we need Mars because without Mars, we never get anything done. We need aggression and action and ambition. But what we don't like is when it comes to conflict and war. But we have to put that in our mix because it's there. And when you think of your own lives, you may be able to relate to this, that you've got a bit of a conflict going on in your life. And this is going to reach something of a peak at this particular time. And when we come to the very end of this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to manage that. But I'm just sort of laying it out for you at the moment. So it's a terrific power surge. And if we look at this alignment in terms of the sort of mythology of it and the keywords that I've given you, we can look at it a little bit like a volcano, can't we? We think about the earth, the very core of the earth, and things coming up from the core of the earth. And of course, some of that power is destructive, yet at the same time, it is also constructive. It gives birth to things as well. And that's a good image to have about Pluto as well, and how we can see certain aspects of what's going on in the world in those terms, as well as we can direct it to our own lives. Well, the other thing I want to point to is that although this is a very powerful alignment, it isn't unique. We've had this arrangement of Mars and Pluto and Jupiter before. Now, maybe not exactly in the same arrangement, or we have the three planets in an arrangement with each other. And because I wanted to look first at Pluto in Aquarius, remember, Pluto's taken about 248 years to get back into Aquarius again. And so back in 1778, Pluto was in Aquarius then. And we also had Mars and Jupiter in alignment. It wasn't exact. We had Jupiter in Leo and Mars in Taurus, and that was in the April of 1778. And I bothered to have a look and see what kind of events were happening at that time. Well, of course, the American Revolution was ongoing. So there was a lot of conflict and a lot of strife, and there were clearly a lot of small wars or battles going on at that time, some of which were fierce and deadly, and others were more like skirmishes. But intriguingly, when this alignment was in play in the April of 1778, the design or the symbol for the dollar as we know it, that S with the line through it, that was developed in the April, brought into being in the April. So we have a little nod to finance as well as to conflict. If we come a little bit closer to where we are now, then we're looking at 2014. And I talked about this on previous videos, mentioning that in 2014, Putin annexed Crimea. And of course, we've got a bit of a nod to all that happening now as we've got yet another conflict on our hands with Ukraine. But also 2014, as we got towards the end of the year, we were in October, we had a configuration with Mars in Libra, we had Pluto in Capricorn, and we had Jupiter in Cancer. So we had that configuration going for us in 2014. And around the time when it was sort of closest, and we also had a lunar eclipse at that time, there were all sorts of things going on. I mean, there was a dynamite factory that went up in Bulgaria. And then in terms of finance, back we come to the hacking, the cyber hacking of JP Morgan Chase, where 83 million accounts were hacked, which wasn't so good. And I think in many ways, what we see whenever we get Jupiter, Pluto and Mars involved, we've got explosive in some way, but not necessarily in terms of things blowing up, as in the case of the dynamite factory, but really situations blowing up, things happening and coming to a head, and those simmering things now coming right up into the foreground of life. And that's what we really, really need to think about. So the next thing I'm going to do is have a look at this configuration in terms of how it looks in a horoscope. So the first thing I'm going to look at is how this looks in terms of the exact Mars-Pluto opposition. And you can see in this, I've set it from London for no reason other than that's always where I start when I'm setting up charts like this, to see, where I'm going to be able to see the strongest representation of any particular alignment. And you can see here we've got Taurus rising. We can see the sun coming to the very end of Taurus in the sort of 9 o'clock position, 29 of Taurus. But we really want to focus a little bit more on that Mars-Pluto opposition, left-hand side of the chart. In the sort of 6 to 7 o'clock position, we find Mars at 0 degrees of Leo and 17 minutes. And right opposite in the 10th house of this particular chart, Pluto at 0 degrees 17 of Aquarius. So that is the portrayal of that opposition. Now, if we come to the right angle to that, 90 degrees anti-clockwise from Pluto, we will see Jupiter in about the 9 to 10 position in this horoscope. Jupiter at 1 degrees Taurus and 0, okay? So while the Mars-Pluto opposition is happening on the 21st of May, we had the Jupiter-Pluto square happening on the 19th of May. And I'm going to show you that in a little minute too, but I want to look at it particularly from this angle. Now, you'll see here that in this particular alignment, we've got the moon, 8 o'clock position in our circle at 17 of Gemini. So the moon is out of the way now. It's in a whole different sign, and it's not really making any kind of impact on this T-square configuration we're looking at. But for your information, the moon enters Taurus on the 17th of May at 13 minutes 29 British summertime. So that's 12:29 GMT, UTC. Anyway, figure it out as to where you may be in the world to get the exact moment. But of course, as soon as the moon enters Taurus, within half an hour of its entry into Taurus, it's going to square both Pluto and Mars and approach Jupiter. So that is going to be a very interesting period of time. One, you may want to note yourself to see what transpires in your own life, but also you may be wanting to look out on the national stage or the international stage and see what eruptions are going on at this time. Now, the important thing about that moon entering Taurus is that, of course, it's going over the solar eclipse position and resonating with the solar eclipse of the 20th of April. So you see why I'm getting very kind of impassioned about this particular alignment, because I think there's a lot of stuff going to happen around this time that you could say is coming up from underground. I think on one of my other videos, I talked about draining the swamp. And this is like everything in the swamp, kind of coming up and, being not regurgitated, but just looked at for what's been lying under the ground. Now, if you come back to me for a minute, just for a second, what I'm also going to do is have a look at this particular alignment from the perspective, really, of the new moon. And we're going to come to that in a moment as I go through some of their sign. So let's have a look at this. Now, here you can see it's actually a little bit more dramatic, isn't it? When we can see, again, Mars at the top of the chart, Pluto at the bottom. When we're looking at the new moon, 28 degrees of Taurus, 25 minutes, Mars has not yet entered Leo, so it's not exact in terms of sign by sign, Leo, Aquarius. We've got the same position, if you like, as we had on that solar eclipse at 50 odd minutes of Aries, which got everybody totally confused about which house it was in, what it meant, why am I looking at the second house and not the first? Well, it's because this is a real dichotomy, really. And you've got something happening at the very, very end of one sign, but the exactitude of something happens at 0 degrees of the next. It is a little bit of conflict here, but you can at least see the dynamics here quite clearly. Jupiter at 0 degrees of Taurus, Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius, Mars right up there, 29, 26 of Cancer, and the new moon in Taurus aligned with Jupiter. And you can see we've got a lot of things really around that kind of Jupiter neck of the woods, that Taurus neck of the woods. We've got Jupiter, the North Node, and I'll come back to that in a minute, Mercury, Uranus, the Moon, and the Sun, everything compacted into that sign of Taurus. And why the North Node is significant in this, and why this alignment is again so significant, is, of course, the nodal axis, North Node, South Node, is where eclipses happen, and therefore there is an aura of fate and destiny about the events surrounding or at the same time as this alignment is playing out. Again, let's think about this in terms of major global events and things happening in our own lives as well. So let's come back to me again. And I think what I also wanted to just remind you of again before I start looking at things sign by sign is that, the way I do it has to be general. I can't get into everybody's natal chart and sort of see it from the exact perspective it's in. So be a little flexible. And as I said before, take it first of all from your sun sign, because sort of looking at the quality, your sun sign is like your brand, your nationality, and how you come to meet your experiences in life as viewed from your sun sign is very important, because that's your perspective, that's who you are. But of course, when you know your ascending sign, then you can fit this particular configuration exactly into the houses that you need. So now let me go through this important alignment, and together with the new moon, of course, sign by sign. And we'll start with Aries. Now, Aries, with Jupiter leaving your sign on the 15th, 16th of May, is going to move into your next door neighbor sign, which means Jupiter will be in your second house. And the second house is all about values. It's about your material assets. It's about your emotional values. It's both a kind of feeling thing as well as it is a material matter. Self-value, self-esteem. These are all things to do with the second house. So as Jupiter starts its journey through the second house, you are going to see a rise in your self-esteem. And you are, over the course of the 12 months that Jupiter will be moving through these 12 signs, You should be seeing an increase in your income as well. But let's not forget that other word for Jupiter. You're ahead of me, aren't you? Yes, inflation. So if you've got a bit of a problem financially and things are getting out of hand, the action to take is to cut your losses, is to bring an immediate end to something. And in a way, this is what this big alignment is about, because you've got Jupiter in the second house, Pluto in the eighth house, and Mars in the fifth house. I call these houses, which are the fixed houses of the horoscope, the houses of survival, because let's face it, we're not going to survive if we don't have money. We're not, the human race isn't going to survive unless we bring children into the world. And of course, also create our relationship with other people. What we get from other people is also part of our ability to survive in this world, our interaction with others. So with this dynamic taking place on these houses, which can loosely be described as the survival houses, a lot of the things happening at the time of this extended alignment. Remember, we're talking about the 16th through to the 23rd of May, is all about things that are central to your survival. So either things happen that enable you to embrace this particular influence and really do something to ensure your survival, and you can look at that any which way you choose to, or it may bring matters to a head so that you are forced to take action financially, professionally, even things to do with a relationship, making a stand, because either you've got to cut your losses or you will go on to increase the situation. Now, of course, we've got a new moon to throw in with this as well. And when we look at a new moon, remember this is the 19th of May, we're looking at a new chapter. And again, it's a new chapter linked to the second house of your horoscope. So it's about self-esteem, values, and material values, as well as your moral values, if you like. So a new cycle begins, and it's being given a very powerful beginning with a series of events that really focus the mind on this area because of the alignment that's in play at the same time as the new moon. So new income source, a new phase for all sorts of things that relate to who you are and how others view you, a reputational upgrade, things that tend to bring you a little bit more into the forefront, and a great sense of you having grown bigger through what's happening to you at this time. And remember, the cycle of the new moon itself goes on for a couple of weeks. So there's still a further couple of weeks for which these kind of things that I'm talking about will be in play. So Taurus, we come to you. And of course, it's all happening to you because Jupiter has newly arrived in your sign, entered your sign on the 16th of May. And it's going to spend a whole year moving through degree by degree. And that means every single Taurus is going to have a period of 4 or 5 days where Jupiter is on your natal sun. And that's going to be a period of growth, of joy, of all sorts of good things. Yes, I know we have to mention the I word as well, inflation. But I think it's good to remember that Jupiter does more good than harm most of the time, because even if he's inflated a situation, what it does is bring it to your attention so that you can start over. So Jupiter will be a force for the good for the next 12 months for you, Taurus. And of course, now we see this put into the alignment with Jupiter in the first house. We see Mars in the fourth house, Pluto in the 10th house. So Pluto entered your 10th house back in March 2023. And we had the recent solar eclipse, of course, in the very end of Aries, almost into Taurus, and the first Sun-Pluto square, 0 degrees to 0 degrees. And now we're having a sort of resonance with that, with this new kind of configuration. So very much in your face if you have a 20th, 21st, 22nd of April birthday, or you know you've got planets and points around that 0 to 2 degrees of the fixed sign. So with Pluto in the 10th house, this has so much to do with who you are out on the world stage. So it's your role in life. It's how other people view you. So you can have a role, as I often say, of parent, of sibling. I mean, we all have different roles, but often we link this to our career. We're an engineer, we're a ballet dancer, we're an astrologer, and that's what we do, and that's how people recognize us. So Pluto's beginning its journey through here. So there are going to be a lot of changes with all these things to do with roles and career over the years to come. And again, if you've got things in those earlier degrees, it's going to happen sooner than later. And certainly this powerful alignment with Mars at the base of the chart, opposing Pluto, squaring Jupiter, followed by a new moon in your sign as well. My goodness, talk about new chapters, ending of old chapters, the beginning of new chapters, and perhaps coming about in really, really powerful ways. You know, things that you hadn't really envisioned happening the way they happen. But what they're doing is forging immense change in how you present yourself out on the world stage, how other people view you, and also things to do with where you want to be in life. And this is changing. You could even think about it as a sort of reinvention. You know, you're coming into another incarnation in this life by this particular alignment. Very powerful. Mars, of course, being at the base of your chart, brings family and home into the mix. So is it that this is indicating the sale of a home or the change of home? Maybe through force of circumstances, moving home, or is it more to do with the family? So big things happening within the family, big, changes that really affect or ricochet right the way through the family. But what you want to think of at the time of this alignment, and we want to think about the closest part of it, 16th to the 23rd, you want to see it really as an opportunity to get rid of things that you should have got rid of a long time ago, and so that you are creating space for the new and the more appropriate. And also, if you are ready to shed a skin and show a new one, to reveal a new one, use the power of this alignment to do just that. And maybe there is this idea of a mantle being placed upon you. And I think of that with Charles, with, his particular, astrological setup. I mean, he literally had the mantle placed upon him, and you have to accept it. And it's another incarnation, if you like. So if we move on now and we look at Gemini, the very next sign, then we'll see that Jupiter has tucked itself away in the 12th house, Mars is in the 3rd house, and Pluto is in the 9th house. Let me talk briefly about Jupiter's transit through the 12th house. This is a preparation period. This whole 12 months from May of 2023 through to May of 2024, a time of preparation, of planting seeds, of doing things perhaps a little bit out of sight of other people, using time to retreat, time to sort of consider what you're building towards in your life. So periodically taking breaks, retreats if you can, yoga, meditation, all going to help you in this period of preparation to prepare the ground so that when Jupiter comes into your sign in the June of 2024, you're ready to take the stage. You're ready for everything to take off, but nothing takes off without preparation. So here we look at this incredible setup with Jupiter just entering that 12th house. We think about the square to Pluto, this square to Mars, Jupiter, the apex of that very powerful Mars-Pluto opposition. Something comes about either by sheer effort, determination, will. You pull something off that begins or sows the seeds of your future success, happiness, and joy. Now, it may not be quite so pleasant for some Geminis. Again, it'll seem like other people or events themselves have thrown your life upside down, given you a challenge you weren't expecting, and now somehow you've got to refit and recycle and change, reform everything. Remember that very useful word for Pluto in there. But let's also remember growth, opportunity coming from Jupiter. And Mars, yes, a little bit of a battle. What will also help, or what we might also see from this kind of configuration, it's in the houses that I call the seeking houses. We're always seeking something in the 12th, 3rd, 6th, and 9th. And a lot of that has to do with our purpose, of course, finding meaning in life. So it has a lot to do with learning as well. And sometimes real learning, going to school learning, studying, developing one's mind and one's intellectual and spiritual skills. So bound up in this big, tight configuration, which is going to change so many things for you, is the idea not just that it's a learning curve, it's a journey, but also it has something to do with real knowledge and the real acquisition of a skill. And that's something else to put in the mix there. And of course, the new moon itself also taking place in the 12th house, that seat of power, the power of the unconscious mind. One of the good things might be during this period, 15th to the 15th, maybe a little later, maybe the 16th through to the 23rd, it will be a good idea to take a break from the noise of the world, take a day off, somewhere on your own. So at this time, what you're doing is that you are beginning to replenish your batteries, which is going to, in many ways, take 12 months to really bring you to where you need to be to embrace your Jupiter power next year. If we come now to Cancer, then we have Jupiter moving through the 11th house. We have Mars in the 2nd house, and we have Pluto in the 8th house. So these, again, we're looking at the survival houses here. So with Jupiter in the 11th house, it's a lot to do with collaborating with people, the importance of the collective as opposed to the individual. So the 12 months that Jupiter is going to be moving through the 11th house, it'll be a very, very good idea to get involved with groups for one reason or another, or to consider more the idea of pooling resources, however that may be. I mean, this is just a good phrase, isn't it? Pooling resources, whether those happen to be resources that keep us alive, or whether it's to do with bringing something into being. It's a business, it's an endeavor. And so the participation of other people in that is going to be where the growth is. And certainly growth in enterprise is a very good way to sum up Jupiter in the 11th house, growth in enterprise. And what I also like about this 11th house is that it isn't just about working with a lot of people or being with people or having a group mind or thinking more about the collective and humanity as a whole, as opposed to your own personal self and the things that are in your immediate personal life. It's about teamwork. And we can apply that into our close relationships as well, our one-on-one relationships, because they become stronger when we recognize we're a team. So that whole idea of team spirit is going to be an absolute bonus throughout the next 12 months. So here we go. We've got this huge alignment coming up with Mars being in opposition to Pluto. So we've got the 2nd and the 8th axis there. We're looking at the financial axis, the axis of self-worth. So this is either a terrific drive to boost your income, to increase your assets, to really do what you can to transform your financial world, and those kind of things that really affect your self-esteem. I mean, they're different for all of us, really. What one person gains in terms of self-esteem through one set of experiences is not the same as another. But if we look at the idea of what events and what activities, what pursuits, what situations tend to affect your self-worth, then there's a terrific drive to really get that in place. If you have to move heaven and earth to sort your finances out, or you have to move heaven and earth to be recognized, to be treated for who you are and not as someone else's puppet. That's one of the things you might see in this particular alignment. New moon, of course, new moon coming in the 11th house. What a time to start a business. What a time to start some kind of endeavor with friends. What a time to join groups of a humanitarian nature, to do something, anything about your world or the wider world. These are opportunities that gather around this particular time and this configuration. If we come to Leo, then for Leo, we have Jupiter in the 10th house. We have Mars in the first house, of course. Mars is in your sign, it's in Leo, and Pluto in the 7th house. Now, we've got the cardinal houses here involved, and whenever we've got the cardinal houses of the chart involved, they're doing houses, they're active houses. Things happen, and we progress and make dynamic moves when we've got activity in these houses of the horoscope. So let's put Mars in your sign aside for a minute and have a look at what Jupiter is going to do as it goes through the 10th house. The 10th house is where we meet the world. Hello, this is what I am on the world stage. This is what people see me as. This is my role in life. You know, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a daughter. You can have a role of any sort, but most often we think of the role we have in life in terms of our job. You know, I'm a secretary, I'm a builder, I'm a doctor. That's our label. And we find our label in the 10th house. That's the one we've got. So when we put Jupiter moving through this area of the horoscope, and it's going to take a year right through until May 2024 to go through this area, it's opportunity in a bottle in terms of advancement in your career, of a step up in terms of how people view you. Yes, of course, it may mean that you've gone too far too soon, and there's a kind of eruption, if you like, which says, whoo, let's get back to the drawing board. Let's bring things into a more manageable size. That could happen. But I want really to focus on the opportunities that they are with Jupiter, because when Jupiter goes through the 10th house, we have a more visible presence. And of course, if you're listening to me and you are someone who works in the performing arts, or you work in a business or in a situation where you want recognition, you want people to see you, you want people to recognize you for what you do, then this is your time. Jupiter going through the 10th house is your time to star in whatever circumstance that would relate to your life out on the world stage. Now, let's come to Mars and Pluto. Pluto just entered the 7th house. It's going to start its main journey through the 7th house from January next year. It's going to take almost 20 years, I think, to move through that area of the horoscope. So you're really not going to feel the Pluto presence all the time. It's only going to be when there are connections to something in your own chart, or a big transit that draws something in your horoscope that starts to make it personal. Oh, I've noticed that. So other people have a much more powerful impact on your life when Pluto is engaged with the 7th house. It's almost as though you're compelled to meet this person or to be with that person, or that something has brought you under the influence of this person. And that person can be a teacher, a guide, a guru even. But also, yes, they can be our romantic partners. They can be our business partners. They can be people who we spend a large part of our life with, who influence us and impact our lives. But again, especially If you are an early Leo, you have a birthday around the 22nd, 23rd, 24th of July, then Pluto, Jupiter, Mars, they're all very much in your face, in your kitchen. And it is both opportunity, but you require courage to embrace that opportunity. But there can also be overwhelming circumstances that require you to stand up to them. So that is the picture of this period of the year. But it's also got a broader expression in that what's begun or happens at this time is going to have an ongoing effect. It's not going to happen and be over. No, this is something that's going to go on and continue. And the Pluto journey, of course, is always about your core. It's about core change, and it's about other people and your relationship with other people bringing about core change. Coming briefly back to the alignment again with Mars in Leo. Remember, Mars is going to be in your sign for the following 6 weeks. So it's giving you the opportunity to stand up for yourself, to have courage to do things. And it may, of course, bring rather a lot of conflict and aggravation into your life as well. That's what Mars does. You don't just get good Mars, you get the other side of Mars too. So if we come to Virgo, we've got a Jupiter moving through the 9th house from the 16th of May, throughout this period I'm talking about, and on through until next May. We've got Pluto in the 6th house, and we've got Mars in the 12th house. So we've got this Mars-Pluto opposition going from the 6th to 12th house, with the intersection coming from Jupiter in the 9th house. Let me talk a little bit about Jupiter moving through your 9th house, first of all. Gosh, this is a great area of the horoscope. I think I could live in the 9th house. That's where a lot of my enjoyment in life comes, and where a lot of the enjoyment in our life comes in that 9th house area. Remember, the 9th house is ruled by Jupiter generally, and so it is both a pleasure ground, but it's a both and also an area where we enjoy growth. It's an area where we travel, where we cross boundaries, where our life is bigger and better. So to have Jupiter moving through this area is like, opportunity and expansion on sticks. So this may actually translate as quite a lot of overseas travel during the next 12 months. It could also translate as meeting and mixing with a lot of people from different parts of the world, work-wise or even just socially. But it's also about learning so much. Not only that your experience will teach you so much, but that you might feel a strong desire to take some kind of course, whether it means going back to school, going to university, deciding to join an organization that's going to give you an extra skill, but it's certainly going to involve you looking into things in a much, much bigger, more expansive way. I mean, I think a perfect expression of Jupiter in the 9th would be to take up astrology. How amazing would that be? You'd be on a journey, a big journey, but my goodness, wouldn't it open up your life in so many ways? So this Jupiter transit is a good one for you. Just how it fits into the Pluto experience is another thing altogether. Let's think about Pluto in the 6th house. 20 years is going to move through here. So there's going to be a lot of transformations and reformation during this period of time. I'm just going to switch out of this for a moment. And if you remember when we were looking at the horoscope of the new moon, and we were looking at the alignment in that horoscope, I pointed out the significance of the nodes, why this was kind of a supercharged alignment was because of its connection to the nodes, the nodal axis, the place where eclipses happen, and there's an aura of fate and destiny about it. One of the things about the 6th house, which is where Pluto is that it's about our purpose, the meaning of our lives. And so often that meaning has to do with what we do for other people and how our life path takes us into other people's lives and how we affect them, and how also we give a sense of the service that we have done to our fellow man through our work and through our offerings. That's the sort of meaning of the sixth house. It's also about health, I have to say, and well-being. That's because it's about systems in life, and our health system is part of a system every bit as much as the system and routine that we have of our life in its daily way, so to speak. So Pluto going through here is going to make for many changes over the years, and certainly if that 0 degrees of Taurus, Scorpio, Leo and Aquarius, and the recent solar eclipse and the other lunar eclipse even has made an impact on your chart, then I think this configuration that we're looking at now has a lot to do with your purpose. So it may be a blinding flash of, I'm meant to do this. I absolutely know this is what I should be doing. On the other hand, it may be that you are asked to do something for other people. You are asked to make a sacrifice of some description for another person or for other people. And I think if you look upon these lines, remember, Mars is going to be moving through the 12th house, which is an area really of sacrifice and of letting go and retreat. So Mars is bound up with this. So you get this idea that whatever is happening around this time of the eclipse may have some aspect of sacrifice about it. You may be able to see it in there, but its greater meaning really is this is illuminating what you should be doing. And that is something for which you should be monumentally happy. And also travel at this time. Travel can be part of this experience. An actual physical journey can be part of this aha moment. And what happens at this time through being in a different place or with different people can have this transformational, reformational effect on you. So let's now come to Libra. Now, Libra for you, we've got Jupiter in the 8th house. Remember, it's been moving through the 7th house, or a large part of 2022 and the first part of 2023. And maybe while it was going through the 7th house, you forged some new relationships, whether they were business relationships, whether people came into your life and they sort of made it bigger and better for one reason or other. Or maybe you celebrated a big anniversary, or maybe you got married, or you formed a big business partnership. Whatever you did with Jupiter going through the 7th, now we've got a continuation of that in the 8th, because the 8th is about what you get out of your relationships, what other people give to you, what you receive from other people. So you can see with Jupiter going through the 8th house, the chances are people are going to be very generous with you. So this may mean over the course of the year, from May 16 through to May of 2024, that if you're applying for bank loans, or you need backing for a venture, or you're seeking to make investments in something, or people to invest in you, whatever it is, people are going to do that. They're going to want to invest in you. They're going to see you as somebody of value. Terribly important. And it'll be a great time to think about putting your money into something that will grow in time. It's not a time to be silly with your money, Libra, and to do things to a ridiculous length. You put all your assets into one pot. That would be a mistake. But I think if you're prepared to give some into something that you think will grow over time, then do it, because Jupiter is giving you this cosmic tailwind to grow whatever it is. And of course, also relationships. One of the really important things, I think, when we form a romantic relationship with someone and we go forward to marriage or to decide to live with each other, then obviously intimacy is a really important component of that. It's very, very important that we feel related to on a very intimate level. And Jupiter will help you find that. If it's been it's been a kind of period where you have felt that people haven't given you enough and that you aren't getting enough and you've been a little bit isolated. And along comes Jupiter with all this warmth and heat of intimacy. Then that can be a wonderful thing, a wonderful, growth-oriented set of experiences. Pluto in the 5th house, Mars in the 11th house, we're on that creative, collaborative axis. Pluto, long-term transit of the 5th house, is really going to transform a lot of things for you, whether it has to do with your creativity. And a lot of people get stuck with this and they think, well, I'm not creative. I've had that conversation with a client the other day who then suddenly talked to me about all these immensely creative things she was doing. And it's just that some people think you can only be creative if you've got an easel and and some paints in your hand. That's being creative. But no, it's not. It's allowing your ideas to flow into life in a way that you come out with a tangible representation of that. And as I often say, you can be creative in the kitchen, you can be creative with finances, you can be creative with business. So this collaborative axis has a lot to do with business for a lot of Librans. And so when you put Mars in the 11th house, Pluto in the 5th house, with Jupiter squaring the 8th house, if you're starting a collaboration at this point, you're starting an enterprise, it can go far, literally. It can be bigger than you ever imagined. But if you've got an existing enterprise, an existing situation, and it's already spiraling out of control, whether that's financially or whatever it is, sometimes we have too many people involved and there's not enough cohesion in the enterprise or the project, whatever it is. And so it's not functioning anymore. It needs to function as a whole, not as a lot of separate parts. So this configuration may bring about that, you come to a tipping point with an enterprise, and that may mean it has to go in order for it to be reborn or for you to channel your creative expression into other areas. Has a lot to do with relationships as well, this particular, area of the horoscope. So if a romance begins at this time, in this mid-May period, my goodness, it's going to change your life. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll last forever and you'll go happily into the sunset with each other. In fact, maybe it won't. But the point is, the impact of that relationship will change a lot in your life. It'll get rid of a lot of dead wood. And a lot of the things that you've been putting up with, this new romance, this new relationship will make you see that shouldn't be part of your life anymore. So you'll get rid of it in order, to welcome in this new love affair, this new bonding. If it doesn't last, you may think, my goodness, I gave up all of this and threw all that away for this relationship. What a waste of time. No, it wasn't, because that was the means through which your life changed. And the same thing can happen with giving birth to a child. That child will change your life forever. I know all children do in a way, but there'd be something special about this particular child. And if you have existing children, Libra, then this dynamic arrangement may have something to say about them. Maybe a great success for one of your offspring, or maybe some kind of upset with one of your offspring. Remember, we have a tier of meaning, and we're dealing here with 3 very different entities, and we got a new moon thrown in, which suggests a new chapter after the old one has ended. If we come to Scorpio, we're looking at Jupiter moving through the 7th house, and it is going to take a year to complete this particular transit, a transit of Taurus, a transit of your 7th house. And normally when Jupiter goes through the 7th house, all sorts of good things happen. We meet great people. People come into our lives and influence us for the better. We get backers. We get people who say, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Let me join with you. Let me get myself behind you because there's so much you have to offer. And it's a wonderful thing. We really feel we're meeting all sorts of important people. Sometimes we meet celebrities during the time Jupiter is going through the 7th house. Sometimes we marry or we meet the person we're going to marry. And all sorts of good things happen when Jupiter's going through the 7th. But I have a word of caution here. Because sometimes with Jupiter, and if we come back to our mythology again and think about Jupiter, the king of the gods, and he was a little unfaithful and saw nothing wrong in whoever he wanted to be with. Whatever took his fancy, off he went. And poor old Juno, of course, put up with a lot. So this theme is also going to be apparent during the time Jupiter is moving through the 7th house, whether it applies to you getting a pair of itchy feet, or whether it applies to someone you're partnered with having a pair of itchy feet. And let's not forget, Uranus is already moving through the 7th house, and at some point next year, Jupiter and Uranus are going to combine. And guess what? That's going to be pretty explosive and a lot of change going to come about with that, whether it's a sudden, new, compelling relationship or it's a bust up of quite big proportions. So we need to bear that in mind every bit as much as we see Jupiter moving through this territory of partnership as being such a good time to meet people, to partner up with people, good things happen. So Jupiter, new into Taurus, into your 7th house, but guess what? It's going to be angling a Mars-Pluto opposition from the 10th house to the 4th house. Pluto going to be a long-term resident at the very base of your chart. This is to do with your grounding. It's where you come from. It's your family. It's your background. It's your heritage. It's your ancestry. My goodness, is Pluto going to deliver a lot of awakenings during the time it's going through the 4th house? You're going to find out all sorts of things about your family. And maybe also there's going to be some amazing realizations. Remember the idea of core change? We do a lot of core work when Pluto is going through the 4th house. So a lot of core stuff is going to happen when you think about your relationship with the family, where you come from. And that can be very real dialogues and developments with your parents or with your children or with family members. And this is all part of a very big, long core change within you as an individual. So we could look at the idea that the Mars-Pluto-Jupiter setup is going to give birth to that, so that what I've just talked about is going to bring it directly into your experience during this time. So everything I've just said, oh, that's it, that's happened. On the other hand, that may not be what's apparent at this time, although still take on board what I've said. What happens instead? Mars in the 10th house. This is the area of you out on the world stage. This is the area of career, if you have a career. It's the material world, your material ambitions. Then what we're going to be looking at here is something happening that could really change the status quo as far as your career goes and your location. It could be big. You could have an opportunity to move state, move country. So things are really big moves afoot, either generated by what's going on in your career, generated by what's happening on the home front, but also, guess who else we have in there? We've got Jupiter in the 7th house and a new moon in the 7th house, which says a partner or somebody has a personal impact on all of this. It's brought about by a person. I talked earlier about this idea of embracing this dynamic, and by consciously looking how you can bring those words together: opportunity, courage, and power. And this is important, that you look at the things that are happening around this time as opportunities for you to embrace that and harness those energies. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, for you, Jupiter is moving through the sixth house. And I know if you go to an astrological textbook, it'll tell you there's going to be lots of work. You're going to be working a lot, which is good. Maybe you needed to work a lot. But there's much more to this house than work. It's a sort of area where a lot of organizational stuff is done, the things that are the infrastructure. It's the infrastructure of our life. And it's the infrastructure, if you like, of who we are. So it's our health system. It's how our life runs. So Jupiter brings opportunities here for growth, but also for the inflation of problems. So if you're not paying attention to your health, for instance, you're letting a situation, a condition run away with you, then that's not a good thing. And it needs to be tackled. And maybe on this particular configuration of Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars, you'll be made aware, my goodness, I have to get this under control. That's a possibility. But it may also be your work situation. And it's not so much the job you do, the kind of label of job that you do. It can really be how you work. In other words, the workplace, your fellow workers, the systems you have in place for how you do your work. So with Jupiter here, yes, there are all sorts of opportunities to grow this area. So your workplace may grow. You may have more colleagues. You may have more money to play with, all the gadgets and gizmos you need. And yes, there is a sense of growth happening in connection to your work. It's more than that, though, isn't it? Because when we look at where everything else is, when we think that Pluto is in the third house, this has a lot to do with what you're seeking in life. What makes your life rich? What, when you experience something and you think, oh, I've just learned that, I've understood that, this is something I didn't know before. That's always a great thing. And when Pluto is moving through your third house, there are going to be a lot of aha moments. And there are a lot of things about your belief systems, about knowledge in general that Pluto will transform, so that you're going on a big educational journey, both in experience and knowledge. And of course, it's a spiritual thing as well, so that through your experiences, your spiritual universe will change and it will become more powerful, more meaningful, giving you more depth. So again, let's come back to Mars now being in the ninth house. It's going to oppose Pluto, square Jupiter. Then this can be a terrific surge in understanding. It can be an educational experience that changes everything. Something that happens changes your whole outlook, changes, where you were going, what you were thinking, how you were being. How fundamental is that? And of course, that ricochets into work, your resources, your lifestyle, all of it. So again, we could be looking at a specific event around this time. Remember, we're stretching it from about the 16th through to about the 23rd, which incorporates the new moon, which in turn is all about new beginnings. That's in the sixth house. I've just been talking about new chapters. We get something that happens that means you're now going to look in new directions for things that sort of matter to you in an intellectual, a belief system way, something that's about the direction of life or where it's taking you or where you want to be. And it may even be that a journey, perhaps to a foreign place, or the journey itself, the destination, people who come into your life right now, who are from different backgrounds, different disciplines, they all have an effect on where you go from here. Capricorn, Jupiter in the fifth house, Mars in the eighth house, Pluto in the second house. So I'm going to start with Jupiter because that's also where the new moon is, in the fifth house, very creative area of the horoscope. And again, I want to say that be creative with the idea of creativity. It isn't all about painting a canvas I know a lot of people think, oh, that's what a creative person does. But no, people who are creative think up ideas. They think of ways around situations that are inventive. They think about doing something that's unique and of themselves. And there's something wonderfully fulfilling when we give of ourselves and we offer from ourselves. And that whole idea, when we think about the fifth house, is also pro-creativity. What is the greatest offering we can ever give to the world? Yes, it's another person. So it's about babies and pregnancy. So we've got Jupiter going through this area of the horoscope. So for a lot of Capricorns, this is a very fertile time from May of 2023 through to May of 2024. Fertile with ideas, fertile with production, fertile with reproduction. And it can also mean that your children and offspring that you may have are also a source of pride, a source of joy, a source of growth, so that you might make tremendous gains or be incredibly happy because of what an offspring has done, is doing, or simply brings to you by being of themselves. And I think certainly if you've been struggling to get pregnant or to acquire another child, whether through adoption or whatever way, Jupiter's transit of the fifth house makes it a lot easier. You've got the right climate in which that can happen. And when we put this alignment in play and we put the new moon in Taurus in the fifth house, we've got something here that says, this is the time to go for broke. Do it. Go for it. If you've got something you want to bring into being, harness this dynamic alignment, because this will give you a rocket-powered start to what you want to achieve. It's not necessarily a beginning and a middle and an end, all in those 5 days. That's what it won't be. But what you start, what you bring into being, what you put all your energies and time into it, this period of time, the results in the fullness of time can be fantastic. Now, I have to say that sometimes when you've got Pluto, going through the second house, there can be some issues with money. It's got a long journey through the second house, so it will have to be right now and this alignment that may bring you an event that shows you either you've made it, you won the lottery, fantastic, you made an investment, and wow, has it ever paid off? That's what this dynamic could do. It could bring you an inheritance, a settlement, something happening that makes a dramatic difference to your income. But as much as it could work that way, it could work the other way. So that an event, not necessarily an event of your own making, could be the reason that you lose money or that something is lost. One of the things that I was looking at earlier when I was talking about this whole configuration was the idea of Pluto and the underworld and how things are erupting. And particularly with Pluto in the second and this kind of alignment, it may be that if you've got investments, or maybe if you're working with a particular bank, that unbeknownst to you, things aren't as healthy as you thought they were. And come this dynamic, you've now got somewhere where you kept your money or you trusted your money with this particular organization or whatever it may be. Then an event happens and you see that maybe it wasn't as secure as it might be. And it's also possible to have a radical change of your income because of this particular structure. But you know what? What's going to come out of it? Yes, you're ahead of me. Something really, really good, because a new way forward is needed. This experience is for you, and it's good for you because it will change your life, transform things at core level, for which you will be forever grateful. Right. Aquarius. So Aquarius, you know what's happening to you, don't you? You know that Pluto is already in your sign. And if you've got 0 degrees of Aquarius rising, you've got it in your first house. And that means that Mars is in your 7th house and that Jupiter is in your 4th house. Now, as Jupiter goes through the 4th house during the course of May 16th through to May of 2024, it's going to be a very, very good time to put down roots. So maybe you are already thinking that you want to get on the property ladder. Well, Jupiter will help you do it. Or maybe your house has money locked up in it, and so you need to release the money that's in your home. Or maybe you need to turn your home into a workplace or even into a home business. Jupiter will help you grow. It will help you make money. It will help you have a better home life and a better lifestyle. Proviso. Remember the word inflation. We have to always remember with Jupiter that if things are spiraling out of control, and with the cost of living and all the things that have happened to us since the war in Ukraine and everything else, if you see your mortgage payments or things spiraling, you're going to have to cut your losses here. Get back to 0 necessarily, but you know what's going to happen when you get back to 0? Oh, growth. And it's going to be good growth. It may take time, may take the course of that year to get you back on track. But my goodness, you're going to be the richer for your experience. And that's all tied up with this Jupiter. And also, we've got a new moon at the base of your chart as well. And so this new moon also indicates a new chapter, but after the closing of an old one. So if you're already house hunting, you're thinking about moving to a different rental, even to a different country, who knows what you may be thinking. This is the time to really set it all in motion. And what you may find is that it just simply happens. Now, Mars. Where is Mars? It's in your opposite sign. It's in the 7th house. So we've got the idea of other people having a lot to do with the things that are happening in your life in terms of where you may live, where you may what you may decide to do with your home. And I've given you a whole list of those ideas: releasing equity, selling, buying, working from home, a home business. It's somebody that activates this for you. Whether somebody's actions mean you have to think like this, or whether somebody comes along and makes you an offer. The only thing I would say about Mars going through your 7th house is that it often reveals an enemy. And even if you get the best end of Mars, which is somebody who fights your corner and is very much behind you, which can happen, you can get a champion with Mars in this area, and certainly with Mars hooked up to its opposition to Pluto and square to Jupiter. But you can also get an enemy. And it would be wise not to make an enemy at this time, because that enemy could not only be a formidable foe, but you may end up with that enemy for a very, very long time. So if at all possible, if you see that there are divisions growing between you and an organization or you and another person, remember, you don't want this to go on forever. You don't want this to destroy things that you hold dear. So far better to negotiate and to be prepared to give way a little in order to not allow this to escalate. And that might be a really important message for me to give you here. But when I think about it again, you know, sometimes in life we need a challenge, don't we? Well, we just need people to come up and threaten us. And we need to think, right, I've got to meet this challenge. Who am I? What do I have? And with Pluto moving through Aquarius, moving through your first house, if you've got Aquarius rising, then this is all about transforming who you are, of changing through your experience, of shedding a skin and revealing another one, the caterpillar to the chrysalis to the butterfly. That's what's going on. And it's not an overnight process. This alignment may be the point at which events happen that trigger this process, but it won't be completed during the course of these next 6 to 7 days, or even in the immediate future. It's going to take time, Aquarius. And so we come to the final sign, the last sign of the zodiac, Pisces. And we've got Jupiter moving through your third house. So I wonder if you're off on your travels. Maybe as I speak, you've got your backpack ready because you're about to keep moving. And it's not necessarily to move to great distant places so much as getting to know more about where you live. So it's more about your own country or even your own neighborhood. So you're exploring. You are on an adventure throughout the time Jupiter moves through the third house from the 16th of May through to the middle of May next year. Think about your life as a journey and of exploring your world, particularly your small world, but it could be the bigger, wide world as well. So you may very well take a very, very long journey. But again, these are all metaphors, aren't they? When we say we're on a journey, and we can be on a journey because we've decided to learn something, or we started a course, or we've gone to school, or we've gone to university, and so we're beginning, and over the course of time, we reach the end, and either we get qualified, or we finish the course, whatever it may be. And of course, if we do that and we succeed, then that takes us through to the next stage. And it will be a good plan to learn something new during the time Jupiter is moving through your third house. It can be anything. It can be a skill. It can be about life, or it can be very much learning a particular, following a study course of some description, developing your writing skills, finding your voice. These are all good things with Jupiter in the third. And surely some of you will gain a new audience throughout these 12 months. For instance, if you have a YouTube platform or Facebook or any of these kind of media platforms, then it will grow thanks to Jupiter. And why it's going to grow is that you've got things to give. It isn't about, it's not about what's coming to you necessarily. It's all about what you are giving to other people in the way of ideas, of education, of insights, all of those things. So Jupiter's going to give you your platform. Let's just leave it there. Jupiter will give you a platform. So now we look at these other factors gathering here. And let's not forget the new moon on the 19th of May, which is going to open a new chapter. You may find that's when your new platform begins to reveal itself. So where have we got Pluto? We've got Pluto in the 12th house. So it's a fairly shadowy area. So I tell you what's going to happen over the course of many years, and it'll happen at different times. It depends when Pluto actually connects to something in your natal chart. But it'll be almost like you have an awakening. It's like, wow, as I never knew that. And it isn't just an ordinary awakening. It's much more powerful than that. It's like something that will totally change the way you view yourself. You view where you are going in life. You view what's important in life. These great understandings, this great wisdom that comes to you from almost nowhere. That 12th house is the area of secrets and shadows, I often say, but it's a very spiritual area. We can plug into all those things that you think can compose your spiritual life, whether you think about guides, whether you think about God, whether you think about a Buddha, whatever it is, it's bound up in that 12th house. And so that becomes more of a reality. It plays more of a part, an increasing part of your life. The getting of wisdom, we might call that Pluto passage, but it's also the getting of wisdom means also the dropping of falsehoods, of things that aren't valid. So there's a large process going on like that, and it will extend to more than just your spiritual world, your spiritual life. It will be in real life as well. And maybe that's what ties into this particular dynamic as we meet it in this time period, 16th to the 23rd of May, that something happens that challenges your views of what's important, of how the whole thing works, of, you know, why you're here, what, you know, what helpers you may have, what is the structure, the belief structure that you have that allows you to function in your life, because something is going to shatter that, and for good reason, because new understandings need to be made. We also need to look here at things to do with your resources and the systems that you have in place in your life. And that's really because Mars will be going through the 6th house. So it has a lot to do with systems, has a lot to do with life purpose, and it also has a lot to do with health. I know these all seem very random and different ideas, but they're all part and parcel of this particular configuration, which is why it may manifest for you on so many different levels. And I think the understandings you gain during this period that may come about by surprise, or you're not expecting it at all, these are going to be part of your growth over the next however many years. And during that time, this whole idea of what am I doing here? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What is it all about is going to become increasingly clear. So it's a powerful time, Pisces, and you're already a very kind of open to all sorts of levels of reality and other worlds. I mean, Pisces is that kind of sign. So the presence of Pluto in your 12th house, Mars triggering all that, Jupiter accelerating your learning and growth, this could be a very, very personally and spiritually powerful time for you. So, my conclusion, I've been thinking about this long and hard and looking at this really mighty alignment, and I can really put together my thoughts on how we meet it and various aspects of all of that. And what came to mind was this idea that the ends justify the means. Now, we say that often, don't we? And sometimes I think occasionally the ends do justify the means, but a lot of time they don't. And if we look back in history and we think about 1945 and the dropping of the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, how at the time, the justification for that was that it was the only way to stop Japan from keeping on going in the war. I'm sure now with reflection, there were many other ways that could have been done. And that also ties into another statement we make a lot of the time. You've got to be cruel to be kind. Now that covers a multitude of sins, in that we're harsh to people because we want to be harsh to them, and we're not kind to them. Occasionally, of course, it does mean taking a firm hand with someone, but there's still kindness in there. So these two statements kind of go together, and it made a sort of sense to me when I looked at this particular dynamic. Because this is very powerful, this Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, all the eclipses, all of this coming together at this time. And what it may do is that it may produce circumstances or inspire us to do something, anything, because of what we're dealing with. And we may decide the ends justify the means. I'm just going to do it, regardless of what the consequences are. I'm just going to do it. And I'm thinking that we need to take a pause, whatever it is that inspires that within us. I've got to do something, anything. Take a moment, ask yourself, very simply, is this honorable? Is this true? Is this me? What does this say about me? And if you can answer yes to all those three, is it honorable? Is it right? Is it me? Then do it. But if there's a no on any of those three, don't do it. That way, you can only be right. You can only be true, and you won't be wrong. Thank you for listening. I hope you took a lot of that in. It was a bit of a marathon, but then these are the times we're living in. If you loved it, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.